Hey, welcome to Office Hours with David Meltzer. I am not David Meltzer. Uh, David and I usually host this show on this hour every Thursday. He is actually on his way back from Portugal, where he was at a conference. So he's in the air right now. So just kind of wave at him, and he'll be landing in Newark a little bit later this afternoon. So that being said, I am absolutely jazzed about what we've got lined up here for you today. We got three just absolutely incredible guests, and I'm going to launch with a fellow that I've known for a while now. As a matter of fact, I was at his wedding, and which goes back a little bit of time. But Kyle Kaiser is the CEO of a company, fascinating company called RX Review. And if you are questioning pharma, if you're questioning transparencies with your drugs, with the purchasing, with just kind of how all of this works, you're going to want to hear what Kyle has to say because they are leading the charge. RX Review is actually leading the charge on doing some fascinatingly innovative things in this space. So, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Blaine. It's good to see you.
Yeah. RX Review, why don't you just give us a real quick synopsis of what you do and how you do it? And then we'll just kind of go down whatever rabbit hole that kind of opens up.
Yeah, absolutely. So Arch Reviews focused on delivering cost and coverage insights that are patient-specific, time-specific, and location-specific in the workflows of physicians when they're making those choices. So before we existed and before this type of technology was available, doctors were making purchasing decisions on behalf of patients without any insight into how much those things cost, if there were restrictions based on your insurance, if there were restrictions based on location. And so what we're doing is bringing that data from your health insurance company, from your PBM, whoever sort of adjudicates that claim, into the decision-making workflows so that the prescriber can see, in the case of a drug, the price, the right location, and any alternatives that might be available as the last thing they see before they sign that order.
I remember when my late wife was being treated for cancer, and when she was first diagnosed, had multiple myeloma, and we got a script for a drug. And so I was kind of like, okay, we'll go get this filled. I mean, the doctor just handed it to me. The bill for that 1 month supply was $5,000. And I mean, and you talk about sticker shock. I was kind of like, what? And my insurance covered that first one, but immediately we were out of. We capped, and then it was just a fascinating exploration about where do we go from here. And Absolutely. The doc really couldn't help us a whole lot because he didn't have access to some of the information that you're providing right now.
Yeah, and the two really important things to know about that scenario too is that one that they don't know, and there are several scenarios where there are therapeutically equivalent choices that for whatever reason your insurer may have a preference on that. That might be sort of how they've contracted to keep costs down. And all we're trying to do is deliver that information into workflow so that they can consider that when making a decision. It's not that prescribers or physicians don't want to know this stuff. It's an impossible problem for them to solve because there's, if they see 40 patients in a day, then there's some exponential number of permutations of what could be.
And that's, to me, I mean, the sick care industry that we've got, it's not a health providing industry. And I can get on the soapbox around that one too. But I'm just, the idea of transparency, first and foremost, as a mechanism by which we can begin to level the playing field a bit. And one of the things that I was really struck by with your organization, RX Review, is the way that you're able to interject into the workflow. So the algorithm that you've built and the platform that you've got set up on this, it's not an imposition that the doc has got to go someplace else to now go do some research. It's right in the middle of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis in the consultation with the patient.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there was a sort of a precursor to our company. There was an effort around price transparency to deliver that to, insured members. Really was the first wave of price transparency, which is important, and I think that should be done. And obviously, we want to empower patients or members or consumers wherever they're trying to make those choices. But the value of that type of work was really limited. And
Mhm.
it's really because if you think about it, it all comes down to trust. Is that the trust is between the provider and that patient. I seek out conversations with my provider. I tolerate
Yeah.
conversations from my health insurance company. And so what we want to do is empower that encounter, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what you're going to go. That's who you want to help solve your problem because you trust that they have your best interest at heart. That they, not that the insurance doesn't. It's just that relationship is the one that's giving you care. It's where
Yeah.
we need to deliver the information.
Well, yeah, and yeah, you did. I mean, politically correct and all that stuff. The insurance provider doesn't care, in my experience. What they care about is something other than my health and well-being, based on my own experience. And that's neither here nor there. But what I'm interested in is, by bringing that kind of transparency, do you also affect in any way, shape, or form the negotiation piece between the providers and the payers?
Well,
I know that's
it's
kind of a sideball
yeah,
question, but
no, it's a great question. So really, it's that this type of tool, these types of services. So whether that's connecting into gaps in care, whether that's connecting into cost and coverage information around procedures, whether that's connecting into drug price transparency, this becomes essential software for providers as they start to bear risk. So the
Mhm.
overarching trend is that the health plans want to distribute that risk to the provider organizations that are delivering the care. And so now
Right.
it's up to the provider organization to say, here's your fee to manage the care for Kyle Kaiser for the year. And these types of tools are just, they become mission critical tools because without the ability to understand cost and coverage information, which directly connects to the cost of goods in healthcare,
Exactly.
that you just can't do the work, right? And so that it's no, it's our tools sort of come into play as a necessary tool as healthcare reforms and is renegotiated in a value-based world.
Hmm. Yeah, you've got what, over 200,000 providers that are working with you right now? Is that, you know,
Yep, we
if I
do.
understood that statistic right? And you, in the last 2 years, you've actually facilitated the completion of over 60 million prescription transactions.
We may be north of
I
that
mean,
now. Yeah, we're about 4 million a month on a run rate basis. So
all right.
yeah.
So how did, I mean, I'm always interested in terms of the entree. Yeah. How did you get positioned? Because I mean, 200,000 is a pretty good user base.
Yep.
How did you get positioned and how are you looking to leverage this going forward to broaden
Yeah,
that impact?
we like many young companies have had a little bit of a winding road to get here. We really thought, initially we would be a consumer facing tool. It just made sense that if you're a consumer
Yeah.
trying to make decisions, you want this information. I think what we quickly found out was that it's difficult to get access to the right information, to the specific information. Even in the good RXs of the world are showing you a price, but they're showing you a good RX price, not your insured price. And what we saw a need for was your insured price needs to be more transparent. And
Mm.
where we aligned really well with insurance companies and PBMs was that informing that prescriber at the point of care was a need they had and a need we were pursuing. So that was kind of how we shifted from individual facing, consumer facing to point of care tool. We at the same time started to really closely collaborate with the University of Colorado Health System, and I
Uh-huh.
can't say enough about how important that collaboration has been for us and how important aligning with the provider organizations has been for us. And so we were working closely with them to study behavior change, to look at how we can change provider decision making with different information towards a lower cost end. And that sort of created the right natural collaboration between us and the insurer and the PBM. And we started to do
That
that at small scale, and it grew from there.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I've actually lectured at UC, University of Colorado Health, for a couple of years,
Oh, great.
and they're a great organization. So, yeah, essentially, what I heard you say with that is that, if I take a look at a three-legged stool approach, you needed to have, yeah, essentially UC provided that basis for you, but the second leg of the stool that then allowed you to get into the other side with reputational chops. It's kind of like they're with us. So
That's right.
now, yeah.
That's
As an upgrade, yeah.
It's a multi-sided network business, right? And in healthcare, those are really hard to build because the tool's not really relevant to a provider until you have the right data, and those who hold the data, in this case, the health plans or the PBMs, only want to provide that if you have the users. So you can't get the users till you get the data, and you can't get the data till you get the users. So you really have to find a friendly collaborator to help with that.
Yeah, that's great. Where can people find out more about, and I'm talking about this as a B2C, on the C side of the B, where can people find out, number one, if their GP, if their provider has actually got access to what it is that you're providing, and also what can they do to, if they don't, make something happen around that?
Yeah, we work closely with Epic Cerner and Athena Health as EMR partners.
Okay.
So we're an embedded component of those different electronic health record systems. So if your provider's using one of those, then it's likely that you're using our tool. And if they're not, I think I've recently had some experience in a healthcare system, and it was amazing just to have conversations with them, and naturally you start to talk about what it is that I do for a living and what the company does, and it's amazing to see providers' eyes light up with hunger for this. Like, oh my gosh, that's a thing we've needed forever. And so really just socializing this with the providers, as consumers, with the providers you see, because I think there's a one misnomer is there. Early on in this world, it was there was a thought that the providers didn't want to be burdened with this additional information, which I think we've disproven. And we've seen even some health systems have done some surveying and said the number one requested thing is price transparency around medications. So from a provider. So I think socializing that with the provider community is always really, really important and helpful, because that's ultimately like I said, the trusted relationship is the patient-provider relationship. That's the most leverage in the industry.
It absolutely is. Yeah. So folks can find out more about you directly by going to rxreview.com.
That's right.
Yep. RX as in drug, rxreview, revu.com. So Kyle, I want to thank you. Folks, check that place out. Check the site out. And if you've got an occasion to visit your doc and they're using, if they're using Epic or somebody else, I mean, not that you would know that necessarily, but that's how they keep their records. Ask them if they are using this, because the transparency of the drugs, the transparency of the price for the drugs allows you to be competitive in terms of what you're actually consuming. I mean, so take advantage of that, and have your doc take advantage of it if they aren't already doing it.
Absolutely. We'd welcome that conversation. And sunlight's the greatest antiseptic.
There you go. There you go. Okay, my friend. Thank you. And give a big hug to Carly, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. You got it. Thanks, Blaine. Good to see you.
You bet. Take care, Kyle. Kyle Kaiser, RX Review. Absolutely check it out. This is when we start looking at how innovation happens because there's a need that's identified. And when there's a need identified, then you can actually start to go to market in some interesting ways, but you're not going to do it by yourself. One of the things that I really liked about what RX Review has done, and Kyle has led the charge on this to a significant degree, it has to do with how I define leadership. Co-creating coordinated movement. In the co-creation, they partnered up with the University of Colorado to do this. Co-creating coordinated movement starts to get the ball rolling, and that is a leadership dynamic. That's exactly what leaders do. They co-create coordinated movement. So I think it's time for us to go to our next guest. And here he is, Jonas Stern. And he is the CEO of a company called HapBee. And I'm going to kind of lean down here real quick because I've got my little headset here.
Looks great. Looks great, Blaine.
If you want to find a way to manage your mood state, if you want to find a way to actually get in front of how you're feeling during the day and keep yourself in front of how you're doing in the day, mood is everything. I mean, it really is. It will influence you in so many ways. Joe Dispenza talks about you have to think greater than you feel. And for many of us, the feeling state that we occupy on a habitual basis tends to be our mood. And if you want to elevate a mood so you're productive, or if you want to start to dampen things down so you can actually go to sleep, Hap B has got a prescription for you. And I don't mean from a drug perspective. I mean from a very fascinating Star Trek type of a modality. It is a fascinating way to actually work. So, Yona, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having us. Super excited to be here.
Well, yeah. Why don't you give us 8 bars real quick on number one, what Hap B is? It's a consumer, it's a consumer product.
Yep.
And it came out of, in full disclosure, I'm an investor in the parent company, Emulate Therapies. But there's some fascinating technology behind this little headband that
it's quite remarkable. I will be the first to say that when I first encountered Happy, and I joined as CEO of the company about 4.5 months ago. And before joining the company, when I first encountered Happy, my first reaction was too good to be true.
Yep.
And that sounds like something I saw growing up when I was a big Star Trek fan. And I used to watch Dr. McCoy, my favorite character. He used to flash this little thing. Yeah, he used to flash this little thing that was they used to call a medical tricorder, right? And it had the ability to beam substances into your body without you ingesting them, right? He could, with waves, make you better. Now, I guess I'm just getting a little older, but it seems one by one, everything that I saw in Star Trek is starting to come true. I never thought you'd be able to see people on a phone. I never thought you'd be able to charge things without wires. And now, apparently, you can use waves to impart an effect on cells in your body. And basically, that's what the guys at Emulate figured out almost 15 years ago, is that, like everything we ingest in our bodies is made up of molecules. I remember that from grade 10. What I didn't understand, and what nobody understood, was that for most things that we ingest in our bodies, the reaction that elicits a feeling, a mood, is not mechanical. It's not chemical. You drink that cup of coffee in the morning. You smoke a cigarette if you're a cigarette smoker, and because you're looking for nicotine, which makes you focused, or if you're taking melatonin. All of those reactions are not chemical reactions. What actually is happening when you take those compounds in your body, when you metabolize them, they release a signal. It's almost like a sensing thing that the bioreceptors in your body say, oh, compound present. I guess I should be alert. I guess I should get drowsy. I should have deep sleep. And I went through this really interesting journey from skeptic to curious to ambassador over the course of probably 6 weeks. And for me, the key moment, look, I'm 59 years old. I was the guy who would go to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and wake up at 3:30 in the morning. And I was up for an hour and a half. So, dumb me, the first solution I figured was bourbon. I always figured bourbon's the solution for everything. So bourbon or red wine.
We'll arm wrestle on that one.
No worries. But, the thing that I found out is actually makes things worse. Helps me fall asleep, but certainly makes it more difficult to stay asleep. And the first day I got one of these, I put it under my pillow. I set it to deep sleep, which basically emulates the signal that your body would normally get from melatonin. And I slept till 7 in the morning, and I was amazed. And of course, I went back to the scientists and said, "Oh, I understand this. This is suggestive. This is placebo, right?" And they were like, Yona, we test this on animals. They don't understand placebo. So I was convinced the science is, Blaine, it is airtight. What Happy is doing is pursuing and leveraging this technology and making it available to people on a non-prescriptive basis. So all of the things that ail us, sleep, focus, anxiety, performance, all of these things where we want to achieve an elevated mind state or body state without ingesting chemicals and all of the side effects. That's what Happy does, and we're on a mission.
And that's, you mentioned side effects. That's, when I first invested in Emulate, part of what got my attention was the lack of contraindication in the signal. There were no side effects, and I won't go down that Emulate because that is truly a medical. I mean, they started treating glioblastoma and brain cancers and that sort of a thing. Where Happy has moved, and you mentioned this is a consumer product. It is non-prescribed, and what you've also identified are the signals, and I think you've got 25 of them now. But
we've got
big
25.
bucket,
that's right. We got 25. We call them blends. We very, very much think about this as a lifestyle product. And I mean, if I had to give the 30,000-foot elevator pitch, we're Spotify for how you feel. You've got an app, right? This is basically a device.
That's great.
Right? And you can choose a blend for doing email. Like I'm wearing a blend right now that's called Deep Work. And it allows me to focus without ingesting anything for just the period of time that I want to remain really, really focused and do work. I know all of us in whatever pursuit, whether it's athletic, whether you're a student. By the way, my kids use this for studying. Whether you're a professional, whatever work you need to do. I've always found it difficult to get into that flow state, where you're totally in the groove and you can basically achieve everything, whether it's creative or professional or athletic. Literally, you could push a button and within 10 minutes, you're in whatever groove you want to be in. If you want to be relaxed, you want to be calm, you don't need to ingest anything. I got to tell you, Blaine, it's the most disruptive, most impactful consumer tech I have ever encountered. And I was there when e-commerce was starting in '99, like the first websites. I was there. I was there
beyond the rack,
with wireless. I was there kind of with the second wave of e-commerce. I was there with mobility services. So I've seen a lot of these hockey sticks. And the one thing that convinced me more so than anything else was when I started talking to customers. And I did that before joining the company. I'd never encountered a group of customers that was more passionate about the product than I had when I saw Happy. And I was like, I got to do this.
I was talking to Dave Asbury, the bulletproof guy, and hacker, biohacker extraordinaire. And he was one of the very first endorsers of this, when it first launched. And Dave loves this thing. I mean, and I'm not putting words in his mouth, but he actually, has endorsed this very strongly, as have a number of other, quote unquote celebrities. And this thing works. I mean, you've got patents on it. It's non-organic in the sense that you're not ingesting anything. So again, there's no contraindications. And if you're, guys, if you're looking to really get yourself focused, or if you're looking for a mechanism by which you can actually nod off to a good night's sleep, there's 3 buckets. Well, there's more than 3, 25 signals, but they kind of land in 3 major buckets: focus, sleep, and relaxation.
Yeah, that's right.
Calm. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to, before a big meeting, I'll actually strap this on before a big meeting just to kind of level set, and it just kind of there's a chill state.
It's funny. We since joining the company, we've benefited from a lot of word of mouth. Most of the product that we sell is people telling other people, hearing about it on podcasts and the such. And an interesting thing that has happened is we're getting a lot of inbounds from kind of three core groups. People who are very much focused on wellness, both wellness professionals and the people in and around biohacking and wellness and the such. So a lot of people there, they understand the fundamentals of it. They understand how different this is from everything else. And so I would say that's a group of highly educated and well-informed early adopters. Dave would be a perfect example. Knows the difference between real and pretend. And that's an amazing place for us to start. The other two groups, which are also really interesting, we've got a lot of inbounds from, and I can't name the names, but pro sports teams.
Yep.
Because those guys they're always looking for an edge. They're always looking like the delta between success and failure there is, a couple of turns of the dial towards optimal performance. And sometimes it's physical, but oftentimes, think about golfers, think about people in pro football. It's right here, right? And so it's about achieving the optimal state, not too high, not too low. And we're getting a lot of folks who are pro athletes using the product for one of two reasons. One is to achieve and maintain optimal mental state. The other one is recovery, and sleep is probably the single most important recovery tool that the human body has. And 66% of Americans have problems either falling asleep or staying asleep, as I did. So that's the second group. And again, for me, that was a key check mark. I was like, wait a second, people for whom this makes a material difference in their livelihood are coming to us as an alternative to chemical substances to achieve something like that, which obviously are very deleterious and have negative side effects. And then the third one, and this one's near and dear to my heart, are military veterans. We have a growing community of military vets. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share a small story.
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
I got a LinkedIn, and I'll keep her name private. I'm sure if and when she sees this, she says, you could have said my name. But I got an inbound probably 3 or 4 weeks on the job from somebody who listening to a podcast. She runs a spousal support group, one of the largest spousal support groups for military vets in the United States. And she said, Yona, there are 19 million retired non-active duty military veterans, not including families. Add spouses and families, and you've got a massive community, like 50-60 million people, and we're suffering. What just happened in Afghanistan, this is not a political thing, but just a reality thing, has exacerbated the situation. And sleep is a big problem, anxiety is a big problem, and simply being able to reorient to society, going from, and something that I had little appreciation for before, but I've spoken to a bunch of vets who use our product and use our service, describing to me what it feels like living in Fortnite, living inside of an amped first shooter game. It's not pretend. You're not in a basement quaffing Red Bull. You're walking down the streets with enemy combatants. And going from that to trying to reintegrate into society. Where you're operating at 12 on 10 every day and every night while in active duty, and then coming back and trying to reintegrate into society and looking for a means to achieve even baseline.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
what unfortunately the medical infrastructure offers as an alternative is chemical, right?
yep. Self-medicate
And
or medicate. Yep.
as you know, it causes as much damage as it gives benefit. Addiction. And I mean, I don't need to go there. And so she said, we're at our wits' end. We're clutching at straws for alternatives that don't carry these side effects. And we discovered your product by sheer fluke. And there's a growing group of us. Can you help us figure out a way to reach a broader audience, make this more accessible? And we've made that a core tenet of what we're doing as a company, is working with veterans groups, spousal groups, physicians and wellness counselors that are working with veterans. You know, it's strange. It's strange and really reaffirming for me as an entrepreneur and a business leader to be able to wake up every morning and know that what I do every day to build my business improves people's lives.
Yeah.
And that I don't need to segment that, right? You know, I don't need to say, oh, I'm going to do business Monday to Friday, and then I'm going to be a philanthropist, good person, community-minded person, nights and weekends. When you can combine that, and I can tell you, it's been the easiest recruiting job I've ever had in my life, is building a core team to come join me on this journey. Because once they feel it and once they see how many lives we're impacting, everybody's saying, oh my God, it's what I've been looking for 25 years.
Absolutely. And that is the purpose of business. The purpose of business is to uplift the experience of being alive on this planet. And what HapBee does, and I started with this and I'll end with this, what you do is you enable the process of being able to think greater than I feel. I mean, that's essentially what comes into play with this. I think greater than I feel. And if my mood state is not serving me, how can I alter it without, side effects? I don't want to go down an oxy road. I don't want to go down, all apologies to you, a bourbon road. I might go down a Scotch road, but we're talking here with the CEO of a company called HapBee, and it's spelled HAPBEE, HapBee.com. And check it out, HAPBEE.com. Yona, I want to thank you, Yona Stern, CEO.
Thank you very much.
Great interview. And anything that David and I can do, David or I can do to facilitate the work you're doing with the vets, let us know for sure.
Thank you. I've got a comprehensive list, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
You bet. You bet. Thanks, Yona. Wow. So, folks, I mean, shameless plug here. I've been using this since it came out. I was very excited about the possibility, and I haven't been disappointed. So this is something that's well worth checking out. And I'm not invested in HapBee. Like I said, I am invested in the parent company. So just kind of take that as a caveat, and we just got to work from there. And just kind of, there's not a natural segue here, but we're talking about engagement in large part. And my next guest right now is the founder, and I love this title. I absolutely love this title, the Chief Delivery Officer of Engagency. Carla Romaine, welcome, Carla.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I have been looking forward to this all week. And I love the way that you've pre-promoted. I mean, I'm just going to talk about this very briefly. Pre-promoted on LinkedIn. It's kind of all of a sudden I started getting all these pings. I'm going to be on the show. I'm going to be on the show, and I'm going, wow, nobody does this. And this is really kind of cool. And and I'm a great PR person. Well, yeah, you do. You've got a great PR person, but engagement, and this is what Engagency is all about. And yeah, I would butcher it if I tried to describe it. So why don't I just kind of give you the floor here right now and give us, the 8 bar, kind of, not a slow elevator,
Okay.
pitch. Okay, so I'll give you more time than the 5 seconds.
Sure. So
What is,
Engagency is
what's
all about,
Agency up
yeah.
Yeah.
So we help people, we help Fortune 1000s build websites basically, but we do it with some very interesting platforms that are enterprise
Mhm.
level, mostly Sitecore and Optimizely. And what's great about them is they have these platforms that make it easy to create very complex sites, but they also bring in a level of, personalization and engagement profiling on the website. So it actually helps, engage your users. So our name was pretty apt and a little ahead of the time.
Yeah. So, and you actually started this. I mean, this it's so cliche, but you started this not in a garage. Well, you did. It's a garage-based bootstrap business, and you started it in your basement in 2002. Um,
That's right.
what was the catalyst? I mean, what did you notice that you said, I can't not do this?
Well, I think the catalyst was really my partner and I just felt like we could do things better. Everywhere we
Hmm.
worked, it felt like, I wouldn't do it that way. And after about
Yeah.
5 years of that, we decided, well, why don't we just do it ourselves? Let's see what we can do. And we have really complementary skill sets. So he is, kind of the big idea person, and I'm more of the get it done girl. So having
Yeah.
us together, it just made a lot of sense. And so we started slowly, in our basement and went through a number of different clients and projects and built up a team of people, and eventually we found Sitecore and found that working with enterprise clients made a whole lot more sense. They're a lot more
Mhm.
stable, and that helped us get into an office space and kind of started moving up in the world. And then we moved to Austin, Texas, and had a much better ability to attract talent. And so we've just been growing ever since.
Yeah. And you've just opened a new office in DC, if I understand correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we have. We've got a
And
sales support
yeah.
office there.
So yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that? I mean, Sitecore, first of all, is a system that you can use to implement all kinds of stuff, particularly the digital ecosystem in the organization. But as you're branching out, you've got a brick and mortar site in DC. What compelled you to just kind of take that step and move outside of where you're at in your home base?
Yeah, absolutely. So we moved towards the East Coast because there's just a ton of business there. There's also a lot of talent there, so it's good to attract talent if we've got an office there as well. And also the person that we found to run our uh, revenue operations is based in the DC area. So it was a natural fit for us
And
to
that's
go
okay.
ahead and
Yeah,
open an office and, really leverage that space to attract more, clients that are within that area. So
good. Now, does Engagency, I mean, it's enterprise based, but when I'm talking enterprise, how small will you actually go?
Um, we like for people to be making about 500 million in revenue or more. We
Uh-huh.
find that a company that is smaller than that just doesn't have the budget to, or the need, frankly, to
Well, the
invest
need,
in,
yeah.
yeah, in a very serious content management system. I mean, WordPress has come a long way and serves the needs of a
Yeah.
lot of people. But when you get to a really enterprise level, you're looking at something very different. You're looking at content that's managed across the company, not just centralized in a marketing team. You're talking about needing permissions and different approval processes. And it becomes a lot more complex. Um,
Yep.
so those are the types of clients that we're looking for. Oftentimes we're working with clients that might have an international presence, so they need multi-language, multi-region functionality. So yeah, those are the types of clients we're serving right now.
Yeah. So both internet as well as intranet, if I just couldn't put it in lay terms, you're kind
Mostly
of,
internet, but a little bit of intranet as well. So
yeah.
a lot of times,
So
once
that
you get a
is,
license, you can use it for several things, and so it makes sense to, keep all of your resources trained up on one thing, especially if it's going to be complex to train them on something.
Yeah, I love that. So, what's the biggest challenge that you're finding right now, and the biggest opportunity? And they may be the same, but I'll just
That would be great. Right now, I would say the biggest challenge is just the change to the workplace that COVID has really made, especially on the technology industry. So now we have everybody wants to work from home. They don't want to come back to the office, and I don't blame them. But working from home is fantastic, and nobody is more poised to work from home than the technology industry. Everybody is already
Yep.
sort of at their computers and barely talking to each other anyway. But, so it makes a lot of sense. However, it's done something very interesting in our industry because now you can find people that don't live in your backyard. So it opens up the opportunity, but it also does that for everyone else. So it doesn't necessarily help you when you're trying to find talent. So finding talent can
Yeah.
be pretty challenging, but on the other hand, we can now look for it all over the country instead of just, Austin, Texas, or Washington, D.C. So.
Mhm. You're kind of leading the with a doff of the hat to Facebook and the meta universe and all that other stuff. I mean, I'm going to put that aside here, but in terms of AI, Engagency, I mean, you're really leveraging the potential of AI in a lot of what you're doing right now. And I've got a hunch that it's relatively nascent in terms of how you're actually working. What do you see in the future as you look, say 3 years down the road? And I won't go out 10 or 5, but just about 3 years out. What are you seeing in terms of what AI is enabling and
Mhm.
changing?
Yeah, I would say that, on the web, there's been this promise for a while of really being able to target information to people based on their specific, um, preferences. And that has been true only in a very small number of places. So
Mhm.
Amazon and places like that are huge and they have their own technology that is really driving that. What we're seeing change is that promise of AI is starting to come to fruition. What's happening in the market, in the content management system area, we're finding that personalization is getting easier and easier to actually implement. So where it used to be pretty complex, you had to do a lot of
Mhm.
planning, you had to do a lot of thinking. Now what's happening is you have Sitecore and Optimizely both have services that are doing a lot of the analysis for you. And so they are making suggestions, to the implementers as to what actually are pieces of information that could be used to personalize information on the websites. So it's becoming a reality and it's becoming very interesting. So we're very, very excited about it because up until this point, it take hours and hours to try to make personalization work. And now you can actually kind of turn it on within 20 minutes. So,
Now, say that
yeah.
again. Yeah, I mean, that's
It's
really
powerful. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if you have something that you can, look at and see what your users are doing, and the systems are getting to this point now, they can really
right.
see, what are people looking at? What is this particular person looking at? What are the patterns? And if they're interested in this, maybe it's related to this other thing because I see it next to it all the time, and it'll push things, towards them. So it becomes a lot more like the e-commerce experience that we're all used to. At this point, we're
Mhm.
all taking it for granted that, Amazon is going to tell us, other people like this too, or you may also like, and it understands how to create an algorithm for that. It's been a lot trickier when it comes to, websites. You're looking at something on the website and what is related to that and how do you figure that out? Well, that's where, AI is coming in and it's helping to make those relationships faster because it's a lot of data to process to get to that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
And then you run into secure pages and private pages and people going dark and all kinds of stuff. It gets to be interesting. Yeah. So I mean, and I mentioned that because I mean that's a kind of a fine line in terms of how data is used and people's permission to give that access, and and it's not going to go away. I mean,
No.
so I mean, it's absolutely not going to go away. So partly one of the things that I'm intrigued with Engagency is just the integrity that you bring to the process, and how you actually can yeah, I mean, I won't use the word guarantee, but how you can facilitate people having choice in the process in a way that is holistically generative.
Yes.
Holistically
So
generative.
I would say that, the European countries have definitely
Mhm.
pushed the envelope there with, the GDPR laws that they've
Yep.
put into place. And what we're seeing here in the States is, California has already put legislation into place, and we're going to
Yeah.
see a lot more of that. So you're seeing a whole bunch of companies popping up that are helping to facilitate that. And as an implementer, of Sitecore and Optimizely, we're looking to integrate those systems together to make sure that people are actually giving their permission for certain things, and it's become very granular. So it's not just, yeah, you can put some information on it, but now you can select whether or not you have ads or remarketing happening as a result of the cookies that are being collected by you. So then you've got certain cookies, the little bits of information that are stored, in case people don't know. You can have
We're
these
not talking chocolate chip here.
exactly. So you can have these that are, basic to running the site. You can't run the site
Yeah.
without it. So, differentiating between, what is necessary, what is not necessary, what is marketing, what is not marketing, is extremely helpful. But the other things that are happening are we're looking at people want to have access to their information or the ability to remove their information. So there's
Yeah.
all sorts of laws around that as well. And there's also laws around, how you have a process, you have to actually have a process in place for how you would remove somebody, how you would get them out of your system. And it's illegal not to have that. So I'm encouraged to see that for sure, because, I've been in the internet business for over 20 years now. And I remember it was sort of the Wild West when it started out. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important that we're protecting people's, privacy for sure.
Yeah. And to the point, that's both the challenge and the opportunity here. I mean, if you can crack that code in a very holistic way, this is good news for everybody that's involved.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Carla, where can folks find out more information about Engagency? It's pretty simple. I think we've been posting it here,
Yeah.
but what would you
There it is.
Engagency.com. But what would you like them to look
Engagency.com.
for? Yeah, Engagency.com.
Yeah, so basically, if you have a need for, an enterprise website or you're looking for a job in tech,
There you go.
engagency.com would be a great place to look.
Okay. Guest here has been Carla Romaine, CEO, co-founder, and oh, I said CEO. You're actually co-founder and I love this, Chief Delivery Officer. Chief Delivery, the CDO, the Chief Delivery Officer. Carla, thank you so much. This has been a great interview. I love what you guys are up to. Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. And that is where we're closing off. I've got a takeaway, and it has to do with just the nature of engagement. What does it facilitate? Engagency, I think I'll just kind of riff off of that. The chief delivery officer, what are you delivering? And the idea of delivering price transparency in the pharmaceutical business. Or what's the cost of the drug that you're going to be asked to, take that script down to the pharmacy to fill up? Does your doc even know about it? So all of this is about engagement. And then what Happy is looking at also is, how do I connect with myself in a way that is not toxic? And I mean that. I mean this little tool. I want to be able to think greater than I feel, and with the stuff that we have going on around us today, people are feeling a lot of things that they can actually mitigate. So that's my takeaway from today's office hours. And this has been Office Hours with Blaine Bartlett, not with David Meltzer. And you can find out more about what I'm up to at both blainebartlett.com, but specifically my mastermind is learnblainebartlett.com //LMM. That's my leadership mindset mastermind. So I would encourage you to check that out as well. And next week, David and I both will be back Thursday afternoon. I think it's Thursday afternoon next week, Matt. It may actually be 5 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. Let me just real quickly take a look at that. It is. It's 5 a.m. Pacific time next Thursday. So we're going to be starting off early. So want to thank you for listening and tune in. And David sends his best. And have a great rest of your week, folks. Take care.